Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Over the past month, the world has been fending off the coronavirus through social distancing. Now, many countries are starting to think about easing those distancing measures and slowly opening up the economy again. Hence, it's more important than ever to think about how our bodies can help us fight off the virus when we'll soon be out there interacting with others. Diet and lifestyle are critical for this, and that's what we will talk about today. My name is Nora Rosendahl. I'm the COO of Hintsa Performance, and I will be your host today. As our expert, I have the pleasure to introduce to you the brilliant Helen Patunas. Helen is a nutritionist. She has a master's degree in personalized nutrition, and she works with a very interesting clientele, ranging from business executives to athletes and Formula One drivers. Helen, Formula One is right now on a forced break in the racing season, and the drivers need to focus on maintaining their physical and mental performance. What's the top tip that you give drivers right now in terms of diet?
Well, that's a tough question, Nora, because everything is personalized. So each driver will have a different regimen based on what they need at that moment in time. I can, though, maybe share an example of, so one driver, for example, is doing a 2-week no sugar challenge. So that's the one we picked out as a priority for this particular person.
All right. And you'll probably share with us why sugar is good to, why it's good to avoid sugar in these times from an immunity perspective. Before I let you take it away, a few housekeeping rules for the webinar. You can ask questions throughout the session, and we will answer them with Helen at the end of this session. If you have any technical questions, just type them up in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and I will answer them in writing. All right, Helen, I will let you take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen in today. I normally would start a nutrition consultation by asking this question: what would you like to get out of this session? You're not here in front of me, we can't talk to each other, so I'm going to presume that you want to improve your immune system. You would like to have a strong immune system that can support you against viruses, particularly COVID-19. For some people, that is generating quite a lot of anxiety. For others, they think, well, you know what, my immune system is strong, therefore I'm okay, I'm not too worried, but I would like to just know general tips around nutrition and immunity. And I think what's key here for me is that our immune system is something that we should be thinking about every day. It's not something for us to just suddenly think about when there is some global pandemic and we're forced to actually support ourselves a bit more. And just like an elite sport and in Formula One, we are mapping out the entire season, and we're mapping out points in time where drivers or athletes or individuals, including in business environments, where individuals need to have a particularly strong immune system to be able to get through the challenges that they need to be doing. And we will be mapping out vulnerable times. So have a think about, when is a vulnerable time for you in general in your life? Is there a time of year that you particularly get ill? Are there challenging events or challenging work situations that you're in that you need to give yourself extra immune support? So hopefully this webinar is going to support you in identifying that. Today's flow, so what is a healthy functioning immune system? We've got to understand this really in order to be able to cut through some of those messages that are so confusing out there about things that are going to boost our immune system and things that we should be buying. it's amazing how many supplements are sold out right now because of messages that certain products are going to boost your immune system and therefore stop you getting COVID-19. So we need to understand a bit more about that to see, well, what is it that we should be doing? We will look at how nutrition and lifestyle can help. We will see what to do if you do get the virus, and there'll be time for question and answers. So a healthy functioning immune system, I think a great way to think about the immune system is to think about it like an army. So an army, a great army, knows when to tolerate and when to respond. And that's just like the immune system. What we want to have is an appropriate immune response to different situations. So we don't want an immune system that is underreacting, because then pathogens can come through. Viruses are more open to being penetrated within our system and not warded off effectively. We don't want to have an overreactive immune system, because an overreactive immune system leads to things like chronic inflammation. Or, you know, we've all had a situation potentially where we've had an injury and that injury just won't go away. And there can be like extra swelling that doesn't improve over time that's expected. And that inflammatory response is an over expression of immunity. In the same way as an allergy, we may have an expression to tree pollen and we may get hay fever. That is an overexpression and overreaction of our immune system to something that actually it should otherwise be tolerating. And then an autoimmunity, it's a similar example of an overreacting immune system. So we have cells that are attacking its own cells. It's not recognizing them as their own cells, and it's tagging them as an invader. So we have to also never forget that we cannot talk about the immune system without discussing gut health, because the gut houses over 70% of our immune cells. And if we think about the gut, it is not only a protective barrier, it is a physical barrier from the outside world to the inside world, where it blocks pathogens and viruses and bacteria that shouldn't pass through into our bloodstream. But it is also our immune cells as well, and it is also our microbiota. So let's start with this physical gut lining. So many of us impair our gut lining day in, day out with things in our environment. So that gut lining needs to be a very responsive gut lining that allows in nutrients that we want, but excludes environmental toxins, pathogens, bacteria that we don't want in the bloodstream. And we need this gut barrier to be functioning optimally, opening up its cells to allow nutrients in and closing cells to things we don't want. Now, often we have situations where allergies are heightened, or we have an heightened eczema or skin reactions or even headaches, and we have symptoms all through our body, but they are related to our gut. And they can be because our gut lining is compromised by some of the things that we have in our external environment, such as too much sugar that can feed our microbiota, and the bad bacteria in our gut, such as toxins, such as too many pesticides on foods. Stress can increase gut permeability and leads to changes in our systemic immune system. Now, the gut is also home to our microbiota. And by the way, when I talk about the gut, or we talk about it, we're referring to, it starts in the mouth and it travels all the way through our body and our intestine and finishes at the bottom. So our microbiota is our community of bacteria that lives within that environment. And we have over 100 trillion cells which live in that space. That's 3 times more cells than we have human cells. And what we eat and our daily choices impact, whether, for example, whether we're overweight, whether we eat lots of sugar, whether we eat lots of vegetables, impact the composition of this microbiota. And what's essential for this microbiota is diversity. And this is relatively new research. And we know that individuals who suffer from chronic diseases have lower microbial diversity than those that are healthy. And we know that those with higher microbial diversity have better health outcomes and experience better health and better immunity. So diversity relates to different strains of bacteria within the gut. And we get those different strains of bacteria from the foods that we choose to eat. And it works the same. So the more diverse foods that we get in our diet, the more it's going to feed bacterial diversity. So we like diversity of foods, particularly of plant foods and phytonutrients that feed this microbiota. So, can nutrition and lifestyle help us in this situation, specifically of viruses, of COVID-19? So, what we're going to cover today is basically these areas. So, this section where we can see green on the slide. So, what initially occurs with the virus is it enters the body and it starts to replicate within the body. Now, the first thing that we have to think about, and that we are currently doing to prevent this virus entering our body, is isolation and washing hands and wearing protective equipment. And we're staying at home, and that's brilliant. And we're protecting others, and that's most important, to protect others that are more vulnerable than we are. Then once the virus, if you do get the virus, which is quite likely, if you do get the virus will then replicate, and your body will start attacking that and releasing immune cells to fight off the viral infection. And it requires, in order to do this, a very robust and responsive immune system. It requires raw materials. And today we're going to go through, well, what are those raw materials that our immune system needs? And what we don't need is an overburdened immune system that is too busy doing other things, so it can't fight off the virus in the way that nature intends it to be fought off. When a virus then penetrates, we then get symptoms. And those symptoms can be extremely severe depending on the viral load, or they can be quite light. And we can look at what we can do when we do get the virus. But the most important point of intervention here is supporting the immune system in the long term. And it is just like in sport. You don't just suddenly improve your nutrition on race weekend or an event day. You need to be looking at your nutrition all the year through, so that when you do have your biggest challenges, your biggest physiological challenges, you're prepared and you have all the materials to support it. So let's look at this. The insults that we are receiving every day in our environments that impact our immune system negatively. Now, this is important for us to understand because, again, one of the phrases that's coined, particularly in Olympic sport, is control the controllables. Some things are out of our control, and we just can't control what is negatively impacting our immune system. So don't worry about those. For example, the air that we breathe, we can't control that too much, although it's great now at the moment because the air quality is improving everywhere. But there are negative insults that we are choosing to insult our immune system with every day. And there are some great papers on this, how diet impacts our immunity. And a big thing in diet is undernutrition. So if we can be very undernourished but overfed. So if we have micronutrient insufficiencies, if we have insufficiencies in any vitamins or minerals, then our immune system doesn't have all the kit, just like an army soldier, doesn't have all the kit, all the tools, all the weapons in order to fight appropriately. So a deficiency in a nutrient impacts the immune system. An insufficiency in our bodies can also impact the immune system. So what we want to have is a diet that is rich in nutrients, which we'll go on to. But we don't also want to starve ourselves of other nutrients, so we don't want to be undernourished. And in many of the papers, and the one that was published last year, it shows very clearly that the Western diet, also considered or talked about as the SAD diet, the SAD diet, Standard American Diet, which is also replicated all over the West, which typically is high in sugar, high in certain processed foods, refined foods, highly refined industrialized oils, trans fats. So these are fats that are taken to high temperatures and converted either in a lab or cooking, deep frying, artificial sweeteners, high in alcohol. All of these things use up nutrients that we require every day to support our immune system. But they also do other things. For example, artificial sweeteners, we know, can change the composition of our microbiome. So we think we're doing a good thing by not eating sugar, but we're still impacting our gut diversity, the microbes, the good microbes that we need in the gut. Things like, think about other things in your environment. Have a think about what is it that you do every day that could be impacting your immune system. So a lack of sleep can do that. Stress also diverts energy away from immunity to creating catecholamines, using up vital resources. So reflect. Write down a couple of things right now. Think about what do you do? What could you have less of? So that's why sugar might be something that people think about doing a trial to give up, or just reducing, or having a day a week that you allow sugar into your diet. So the raw materials, what are they? Well, if you've heard us talk before about nutrition, we will always say, eat real food found in nature. Enjoy an abundance of different colours, especially from plant foods. Phytonutrients feed the gut microbiome. Phytonutrients, which are all the different colours and the nutrients within different plant foods. They're more than just antioxidants. Phytonutrients are things like the anthocyanins, the deep reds that you see in the blueberries and cherries, and the different colours that you see, for example, allicin that you find in garlic, and all the different polyphenols that you see in the dark pigments of skins. Even in fish, there's certain, in natural fish that isn't dyed by farmers. So you can see the pink salmon and the pink prawns, that comes from natural sources of nutrients coming from plants originally. So we need to have this abundance of plant foods to feed the microbiome and to give us the vitamins and minerals that we need every day. If we eat this enriched diet full of nutrients with adequate protein and adequate healthy fats, we have everything that we need, and we're giving nature the resources and the tools to combat infection. So let's talk about the raw materials to support the immune system. And this is a hot topic because there are so many products being touted now to boost the immune system, and already we know that we don't want a boosted immune system, we just want an appropriate responsive immune system. And I began by just thinking, well, I'll just list a lot of nutrients that support immunity because we know that. But actually, we have to get virus specific and we have to be careful because this is a SARS-like virus. It has got the genetic similarity. COVID-19 has a genetic similarity to SARS. And it's part of that same coronavirus family. And what we know is that some nutrients, if they're given in super doses, can actually promote some enzyme activity that can make us more susceptible to contracting and then also allowing in the virus. And two of those nutrients are vitamin D and vitamin A. So without doubt, we need adequate amounts of these nutrients because they are key to the immune system. But what we don't want to be doing is thinking the more the better. And that's what a lot of people are doing at the moment. They are super dosing, thinking, well, I'm just going to fill my boots with nutrients and supplements in order to ward off this infection. But it doesn't quite work like that. We are looking for topping up our nutrients to optimal levels. And then we're looking at maintaining them there, ideally through food. But if you've had a poor diet for a long time, we probably need to top it up with extra nutrients. You definitely want adequate vitamin D. So vitamin D we can test for quite easily. And also, this is the challenge of the superdoses because some people do need very large amounts because they are deficient, but we can't tell without testing. So that's what we do with our clients. We make sure we test to see what the real needs are. But we can also establish a lot from your history of diet that you've been eating over the last several months, years. So vitamin D essential, we want our levels to be absolutely topped up. Vitamin A too, and vitamin A we often overlook. And vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin. It's super hard to get naturally from foods. Vitamin A, we don't get a lot of it in our diet because it comes mainly from organ meats. And many people don't eat organ meats anymore. Organ meats meaning things like liver, kidney. So if you like a bit of organic chicken liver or liver, it's very cost effective and you could have a portion of that, not if you're pregnant. Vitamin D, vitamin A, by the way, are fat soluble vitamins, which means when we have them, we store them in our body. And if we have excess amounts, we cannot pee them out. They stay there until they're used up. Another reason not to superdose on these. Vitamin A is essential. I talked about that mucosal membrane that lines the gut lining, which is where all our immunoglobulins are, which are our proteins that ward off infection. So that mucosal lining that runs along our gut lining requires vitamin A to be able to produce antibodies, to be able to produce immune cells. Now, we also need to think about zinc when we talk about immune-specific nutrients and vitamin C, because research shows that zinc and vitamin C can reduce the duration and the severity of a viral a virus. And but again, in SARS, in a SARS-like genetic virus, or in COVID-19, we can see that, or we know that zinc seems perfectly safe. So it seems like a good thing to be using if you do get the virus in relatively higher doses. So you could take a couple of 15 milligram zinc lozenges a day. Ideally, zinc would be local, so you would suck on a lozenge because that can actually stop and inhibit the virus from attaching along the nose and the mucosal membranes and in the throat as well. But I think that zinc lozenges are out of stock, or they were out of stock, along with vitamin C. And vitamin C is another one which we don't know. There is no research to see whether vitamin C can cause any harm in high doses during a virus like COVID-19, but we do know from the common cold and other upper respiratory tract infections that vitamin C is a good thing. So I think with all of this, we need to think about the key nutrients that we would normally run to if we have challenged immune system, and we need to ask ourselves, are they safe and in which doses? So all of this, I would not superdose any of them. I would just take moderate amounts regularly through the day to ward off infection. Now, the thing with zinc is that higher levels of zinc bring down your level of copper. It's antagonistic. So now, if you're increasing zinc, and lots of people are doing it through the year anyway because they think it's winter season, I might get a cold, I'll take zinc, but you're also depleting copper. And there's research now to say that copper is toxic to the coronavirus. So we want to have adequate levels of copper in our system. So we can get copper from foods. Best source of copper is oysters. That's for zinc. I didn't tell you any zinc-rich foods. So best form of zinc-rich foods are oysters, but you can also find them in different meats. You can find zinc in pumpkin seeds, nuts, legumes, generally a diverse and healthy diet. Now copper, which we also want to keep raised, you can find copper in spirulina, also in mushrooms, in sesame seeds, in dark chocolate, which is great. So always go for 80% plus dark chocolate. So it's got as little sugar as you can get. And also a good way to ensure that you're not depleting other nutrients is by taking a multi-nutrient. So you could find a high quality multi-nutrient. Now, it's not our place to endorse any brands publicly, and really these things need to be targeted to your needs, but a multi-nutrient that covers all bases would be a really sensible idea. So it might contain copper, zinc, it would have B vitamins in there because any depletion of B vitamins also can weaken the immune system. Selenium and all sorts of other things. Probiotics could be something that you consider to support the gut and increase the diversity of the microbiome. And then in terms of phytonutrients, so then we really need to think about our diet. Again, we could go into a supplement shop and buy a ton of supplements with different phytonutrients, but we just don't know the long-term effects and the specific effects of taking these supplements on this particular virus. So the best thing that we can do is think about how can we put nutrients that we know are healthy and supportive of the immune system into our foods every single day. So I've got a lovely recipe coming up in a moment, which looks at, so many different phytonutrients, and it's a one-pot recipe. It's a stew that you can put tons of these nutrients in. And really we should be thinking about that every day. We should be thinking about how can we get more nutrients into us every single day. So we'll touch more on acute care in a moment when we talk about what to do when we do get the virus. So let's think about this, the power of 10. So I challenge you all to take up the power of 10, which is, can you get 10 plant foods into either one meal in your day or all 3 meals in your day if you're having 3 meals in a day? And by doing that, by getting 10 different plant foods, they do not have to be in big quantities. They can be in tiny tiny amounts. For example, herbs and spices are wonderful because we talked about that already. Turmeric, for example, can be anti-inflammatory. And different spices have got different phytochemicals. So think about colours. So here is a recipe that has got 10 different plant foods. Well, it's actually got more. And all you have to do is open your fridge and use all the vegetables in there. And if you don't have a wide variety of vegetables, it's a sign to ask yourself, well, what new vegetable could I try this week? If you are so far away from 10, the number 10, if you find out where you are, you might be on 3 vegetables or plant foods a day, then introduce 1 more. And when I talk about plant foods, I am talking about other things as well. I am talking about nuts, seeds, legumes, oats, whole grains. But particularly in a day, if you can think about the power of 10 in terms of vegetables, some fruit, and herbs, then that would be an amazing goal for every single meal. So for example, breakfast. How can you supercharge a breakfast and get more immune boosting nutrients into it? Well, if you're having, for example, porridge or a bowl of oats or a cereal, think about, well, what are the other layers I can add to this? So you've got your base, which could be oats, a simple breakfast, and then you could add to it 3 or 4 different types of seeds. Now you're covering all the bases like the zinc and the copper, and different and essential fatty acids. And so now you might have 4 different types of seeds. You might have sesame, pumpkin, sunflower seeds, some chia seeds. So now we've got, and then oats. So now we've got 5 different plant foods in a breakfast. What else can we do? Well, we could add a little bit of turmeric. We could add some cinnamon. We're on 7. What else can we do? Could we put in a little teaspoon of coconut oil, which could have some antimicrobial effects? It's another one, 8. Can we put on some dark pigmented berries, or should we put in an apple as well? So now we've got another 2, we're on 10. Now you can do that even when you are time poor. Of course you can do that now, or hopefully you can do that, but you can prepare these jars, and what a great time to do it when we are home, when we have a little bit more time, although some of us are extremely busy still, but some of us have got a lot of time on our hands, but we are home and we've got our family around us if we live with others, and we can all get involved in creating situations where we can get more nutrients into us. So for example, you can make up a jar for when you are traveling, and this jar you keep at home, and it's filled up with this mix of 10 nutrients. So in there's your seeds and your herbs and maybe some your spices, and then you put in your oats into a bowl the night before, you put in your mix, and then you soak it in a little jar with some milk, and in there you put in your yogurt, if you wanted to add maybe some yogurt to it, and then you put in your berries, you seal it off, and that's what you have the next day, and you can travel with that. Or you can take some of the dried ingredients in little sachets with you when you travel. So I know it's pretty hard in lockdown to get all the foods that we really want to get. There are some foods that we can't get hold of, but actually there is so many more. Just think outside of what you're used to having, and you will notice that there's so much out there. Even though we walk into a supermarket and maybe shelves just for in many areas are a lot emptier than they've ever been, the shelves are not empty. There's plenty of stock. It's just not what we're used to. So look around and see. And then finally about this, so this is a chicken stew for the soul recipe, and I'm using an organic whole chicken here. But if you are vegan or vegetarian, just omit the chicken. The reason why I've used the chicken here is because then afterwards so it's obviously rich in protein, and afterwards we can take off all the flesh and use for the soup, and you can also freeze that soup and have it in your freezer for if you do get ill later. It's a great thing to nourish yourself on and have as staple stock in the freezer for when you're also time poor. But you've got these bones left over. So to me, this is really utilizing. So we are being given a life of the chicken that we're buying. An organic chicken is very expensive compared to another one, but you could find a chicken that has been well looked after. And we are investing in that life of that animal, and we are utilizing every part of it. And I think what is a travesty is that we are wasting and throwing away so much food. A third of all food is thrown in the bin. And there are ways that what we can do, that we can eat and how we can cook that can really support feeding the world and having enough and not wasting and not throwing. We're using natural resources from the environment and from nature that are then just going in a landfill or wherever it goes. So this bone broth is wonderful because we can then utilize the bones, get all the nutrients from the bones, which is also extremely supportive for gut health. So you've got 2 recipes here, and you've also got, and you can also Google bone broth, and you'll see so much more of how to do that. But it's so simple and so quick. And by the way, these are foolproof. Anything goes. You don't have to stick to this specific way of doing it. So, what happens if you do get the virus? If you do get struck by COVID-19, now I think I've had it, and one thing that you get majorly is no sense of taste or smell. Excuse me. So it's a great time to try new foods if you don't get it too severely and if you're not bedridden. And it's a great time to also, it's really important if you or just for another time in your life to have meals and things in the freezer available to support you when you need them. Now, a typical response when you get a virus is to get a fever. Is to get symptoms. And those symptoms could be anything. So with COVID-19, we often see a fever. And what happens in a fever is our body temperature increases. When our body temperature increases, we are using a lot of energy, as you know, so it can follow with fatigue. It also follows with dehydration. So we need to keep our fluid levels up, so we need to keep drinking. But we know that we don't just want plain water, because we would like obviously some plain water is wonderful, but it's nice to also have some salts in the water and maybe even some sugars in the water. And that is why having a bone broth kept in little jars in the freezer can be a fabulous fluid to replenish our electrolytes. Another thing that we can be sipping on is things like lemon and ginger in water. Excuse my voice that is going a little bit. Local honey is a great thing that we can also add to that water. So we need to be thinking about dehydration, and we need to be listening to our bodies. So if we're cold, cover up and be warm. If we're tired, rest, sleep. And so many of us are used to just pushing through. We push through when we get a virus, and it's considered maybe weak to take days off work. And I'm hoping that this virus will help us listen and respond a little bit better to what nature really requires when we are ill. And when we are ill, often what we need is some rest. But we push through and we cover it up with all these great products that are sold to us, like medications that will loaded with caffeine and paracetamol or ibuprofen that painkillers, so that we can push through. And what does it do? It extends the duration of our illness. It diverts energy from our immune system to other things that we need, like movement and brain power and everything else that we're trying to do. And then the other thing is that it spreads the virus or the infection or the colds that we might be having. We might be getting on the tube, public transport, we're going into the office. So I'm really hoping that culturally, maybe it will be more acceptable for us to listen to our bodies when we do get ill and respond to them appropriately, because nature knows best. And just one comment which you've probably all heard is that with coronavirus, we've all been informed publicly and medically not to take anti-inflammatory painkillers if we get the virus for pain relief. So if you get headaches or something, not to take ibuprofen, but instead to take paracetamol. And that, I think, is to do with not wanting to dampen down that natural inflammatory process which can rid our bodies of the virus. So to wrap up, I think we all know that nutrition is essential. Nutrition is essential to supporting the raw materials in our body and to support our immune system to function appropriately to an invader. And we should be thinking about our nutrition day in, day out, not just in a crisis. But what's really important is that, sometimes some of us here might be doing nutrition quite well. And if you're doing nutrition quite well, you need to be thinking about the whole holistic model. And that's why I love the Hintsa Circle of Better Life, because it considers every area essential for good health and good immunity. And we know that exercising regularly and exercising appropriately is excellent for our immune system, but under-exercise, not moving, terrible for the immune system. Over-exercising, massive burden on the immune system. So that's why if you are someone that is exercising a lot, we need to think about extra immune support. You need extra phytonutrients. You need the power of 10 with your phytonutrients, and you need all the different nutrients from real foods. And then recovery, super essential. And I didn't mention it when you get the virus, but just practicing breathing. We've got incredible experts at Hintsa that would be able to give you the right tool to track recovery, because really we should know if our body needs to rest and tune into our natural response. But sometimes it's great to get this feedback from different devices and tools that can tell us whether we are responsive and ready to train again, or whether we should actually today be in recovery. And then finally, and possibly the deepest and most important of all, is where is your energy going? And right now is a time for us to reflect about who we are, what our purpose is. What we're seeing is that people have we have all been striving so hard to get more, a better car, a bigger house, more money, but now we have quietness and actually limited opportunity to spend some of our money, and we've come back to basics, which is, who are we? What is the purpose? What is our drive for working every day? Some of us lose a lot of energy and diversion away from our immune system if we are occupied with thoughts and we're not in flow. So again, Hintsa has, Susie, our colleague, did a beautiful webinar the other day on your core. Who are you? Existential thinking. So if you haven't visited that one, that's a nice one to think about.